Everyone is talking about the Great Resignation. I've been at my current job for 2.5 years now. I feel like I'm stalling and people are getting ahead of me. Should I be looking? What if I miss out on new opportunities?
Yeah, so the Great Resignation, I've certainly read a lot of reports on it. We're not experiencing it so much at TBWA, which I'm very pleased about. We've had the opposite problem, though, in terms of just trying to find new talent. So there is a huge talent shortage. And then what's coming with that is, different salary expectations as well, because obviously the rules of supply and demand, less people, higher demand, obviously there's an economic argument to that as well. I think that should you be looking for another job? The short answer to that is I don't know. It really comes down to if the role that you're currently in is an environment where you feel you can be the best that you can be, you've worked hard to establish your own kind of relationships and your positioning within the business, and you think that there is opportunity for growth, but you're not talking to anyone about it, then no, you shouldn't automatically be thinking about leaving. What you should be thinking about doing instead is having a conversation to explore where the opportunities for you might be within that organisation. If you feel like you're stalling and other people are getting ahead of you, it's also sometimes a case of understanding why that might be. Do they have a particular skill set that perhaps you don't have? Have they used the last, it's really interesting to see how people have actually used the last couple of years. Some have really doubled down on trying to increase the amount of education or new skills development in other areas, still maintain their jobs, but kind of, looked at expanding themselves in other places so that when we come back into this environment, they've got new armory in the toolkit. And if you miss out on new opportunities, again, it's like so much of this just comes down to communication and understanding why. And if you have a leader that's not prepared to have a tough conversation with you, and there's a lot of them that don't like conflict, then you may need to be the one to step forward to say, can you give me some really clear guidance as to why I have been overlooked on this particular position? Sometimes it might be that you may have a burning ambition, but it's never surfaced to the point where your leadership team can actually do anything about it. So, to give you an example, we have, we often talk about how most creatives are directors in waiting. They all just want to go out and make movies. And so we have really open conversations with all of our team. Partway through last year, we did a passion audit. So rather than just doing a performance review, we went through the entire business and asked people what was their passion. And then we looked for opportunities to marry their passion with the environment that we have here. And what fell out of that was a handful of creatives that really wanted to try their hand at directing. So they went off and directed. We've got an editor who wanted to have a shot at writing a screenplay. So he's written a short film, which is now on the International Film Festival circuit. So you have to be able to, it's up to the business to help you achieve your very best at work, but it's up to you to help the business understand what it is that you actually need. And those two things have to come together. And all too often, we will get into reviews and conversations with staff, and fear gets in the way of you supporting your own narrative because you're worried about what other people might think of you, or you are worried that perhaps it's a little bit too bullish, or maybe someone's going to say, oh, she or he's too ambitious, and that will be a negative thing. That's for the business to make peace with, but you have to make sure you front, shoulders back, head high. This is what you need to achieve out of your career because, when the sun sets, it is your career. So you have to make sure you get the most out of it.
Excellent.
I love that. A passion audit, did you say?
Yeah, it was really interesting.
That's great. And I mean, I 100% agree with everything that you've just said. I almost feel like I don't have a lot to add to that, but I agree. I think as an employee, no matter what industry, you've got to back yourself. You've got to know, what you want, and you've got to know how to get it, or at least ask for it, and carve a way forward for yourself. And then I agree, the employee and the employer need to come together for that to work. In terms of the Great Resignation, I'm in a little bit of a different industry. So working in mental health, our workplace, for 2020, no one resigned. We were an essential workplace, an essential service. People were very grateful to still have their jobs. But come 2021, and the relaxing of some restrictions, there was almost as though 2 years worth of resignations in a year. So I think for some industries out there, it is a thing. But what I would caution is, just because it's making headlines, particularly in other countries who have experienced COVID and the impacts of COVID differently to ours, doesn't mean it will play out in the same way. And I think if headlines come up and you're not thinking of resigning because you're actually happy where you are and you're contributing and you're doing well and you're enjoying it and you love the people, you get the buzz, doesn't mean you should start thinking about it. So I think keep balanced, in your views about that. Having said that, though, there's no harm in looking at what's out there. There are a lot of opportunities, and sometimes looking at opportunities can do one of many things. One being really opens up that there are other things out there that you may be more interested in, or actually could solidify that, no, you're in the right place. You've looked at what's out there and you're actually happy where you are. But I agree with Kimberly. It's up to you to have that conversation. And if you haven't had that conversation, then resigning should not be the first thing you do.
It comes down to internal and external factors as well, right? Like you both talked then about passion. Amanda, you talked about like joy, happiness, contentment. I think that if you're judging your happiness or your reason for wanting to resign on whether I should be further ahead, like I should have a different title by now, or I should be working at a different place, there are things that are very external. Like I think if you can look at, are you happy? Do you love the work that you do? Love the work that the people that you're with? That's got to be a big part of it. And if also, you mentioned about like knowing what you want. I think whether you're looking to resign or not, that's actually a pretty important question to ask, because there's no point resigning and then not really knowing what you want, or thinking that you want to work at another business, but not really knowing whether you're going to be able to get what you need for you out of that as well.
I think there's also, without understanding the context of missing out on new opportunities, the industry is plagued by the latter. Like it's just title after title after title, and there's subtitles in between. And I think, it's often not a good idea to be in a hurry to just jump those title bands, because eventually you will stall, and eventually you could also come unstuck. And it's, again, really interesting. We've had some instances of people who have come into the agency in a leadership position, and actually what they've learned through that experience is they don't want to be leaders. They want to stay close to the work. And so, again, being in an environment that makes space for that, like, it doesn't mean that you can't continue to increase your salary bands, for example. You still are as valuable and increasingly valuable if you're producing great work. The jobs are different. So really understanding what it is within these opportunities that you're seeking and that you feel that you're missing out on. I spoke at a Women in Leadership conference quite a few years ago, and they were asking a question about being a female CEO and all that kind of standard stuff, and they said, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to everyone in here? And I said, know what the job is, because you can take advantage of these opportunities. But by the same token, the expectations on you also change. And so you've got to really work through what it is. Like what are the elements of the roles that you feel like you're missing, you want? Can they be factored into the role that you're currently doing? is there scope to, perhaps redefine your role within your existing organization before you leave? So for me, the main reason I would ever leave a business is because of the culture. The job ostensibly is the same in every agency you work in, but the people that you work with, the leadership team around you, and the culture and values of the business are what make a big difference. So you've got to find your tribe. If you're in a place where you love your tribe, then work with them to create the right opportunities for yourself.
Yeah, great advice.